You enter the room and nothing feels tense. The space is calm, clean, orderly. People are present, but there is no noise that stands out, no raised voices, no visible conflict. Everything looks settled, almost too settled, like a place where nothing ever goes wrong because nothing ever rises high enough to be noticed. At first, control is invisible here. No one gives orders, no one interrupts, no one pushes. The room runs on small adjustments. Someone changes where they stand. Someone waits before acting. Someone looks for approval without realizing it. These movements are quiet, polite, easy to miss. There is one presence that never needs to move much. They do not rush, they do not explain, they do not react quickly. While others shift, they stay steady. While others adapt, they remain the same. This difference does not feel dramatic, it feels reasonable, natural, like this is how the room has always worked. You notice how decisions form, not through debate, not through conflict. A suggestion appears and others follow it, not because it is strong, but because it feels safe, familiar. The room slowly aligns around it. No one resists. There is nothing to resist. People adjust themselves without being asked. Someone takes on extra responsibility. Someone softens their tone. Someone explains themselves more than needed. These changes feel voluntary. No pressure is visible. That is what makes it hard to see. Control here does not feel like power. It feels like balance, like keeping things smooth, like avoiding discomfort. Everyone believes they are acting freely, and in a way they are. That freedom just happens to move in one direction. Time passes and the pattern becomes clearer. The same person benefits from the calm. They receive information first, they are consulted more often, they are protected from inconvenience. No one plans this, it grows on its own. The room feels peaceful, but something is missing. Energy does not circulate, it settles, it gathers in one place. Others carry more weight without maiming it. They become careful, considerate, they choose words slowly, they avoid small risks. Nothing here feels abusive, that is important. Nothing feels wrong enough to stop. The control works because it looks like care, like maturity, like stability. If you stay long enough, you notice how difficult it would be to change anything. Speaking up would feel unnecessary. Stepping away would feel unkind. The system rewards silence and adjustment. It keeps running because everyone participates. This is how control without drama works. Not through force, not through fear, through calm repetition, through reasonable choices that slowly stop feeling like choices at all. The room does not feel dangerous, it feels managed, and that is why no one sees it happening. This is where Jung would slow everything down. He would not look at what the manipulator does, he would look at what others bring into the room without knowing it. The unconscious is always active. It leaks through posture, timing, tone, and habit. People reveal their inner patterns long before they realize it themselves. Some people enter a space already ready to adapt. They read the mood, they soften their voice, they change direction easily. They do this automatically, not because they are weak, but because they learned early that adjustment keeps things smooth. Jung would say this is not a choice, it is a pattern. The manipulator senses this immediately, not as a thought, but as a feeling, a sense of ease, of compatibility. They feel who will move with them and who will not, who will explain themselves, who will hesitate before disagreeing. These signals come from the unconscious, and that is why they are reliable. Jung would also look at the manipulator's shadow, the part of them that learned to survive through indirect control. Often this begins early, in environments where open conflict was risky or useless. The manipulator learned that staying calm, reasonable, and quiet gave them stability. Over time, this became their identity. So when they enter a room, they do not push, they wait. They let others reveal themselves. The unconscious does the work for them. One person adjusts first, another follows. The manipulator does not need to ask. The pattern begins on its own. Jung would say this is why manipulation without drama is so hard to see. Nothing is hidden deliberately, nothing is forced. Everyone believes they are acting freely, and they are within the limits of their own patterns. People with strong boundaries feel different to the manipulator. Their movements are slower, their reactions are delayed. They do not rush to fill space. These people are rarely chosen, not because they are better, but because their unconscious does not offer easy access. The manipulator is drawn to those whose inner world is already open, those who feel responsible for harmony, those who fear tension more than imbalance. Jung would say these people are not broken, they are unfinished in one area, and unfinished patterns attract completion even when that completion costs them something. Over time, the unconscious agreement settles in. One person adjusts, the other remains steady. This feels natural to both. The manipulator feels safe, the other feels useful. Jung would not call this evil, he would call it unconscious cooperation. Two shadows meeting quietly, each fulfilling a role they learned long ago without ever naming it. This is where Machiavelli would stop listening to intentions and start watching effects. He would not ask if the manipulator is kind or fair, he would ask who benefits as time passes. Control without drama only works if it produces results, and it does. Nothing changes all at once, that is the trick. Small shifts happen. One person starts doing a little more, another waits a little longer. Decisions begin to pass through the same place before moving on. No one announces this, it simply becomes the way things work. Machiavelli would notice how responsibility gathers. Tasks move toward one figure. Information arrives there first. Questions are directed there, even when they do not need to be. This is not authority, it is gravity. People move toward what feels stable. The manipulator does not need to insist, they rarely say no, they rarely argue. They allow others to choose, and then they shape what those choices look like. Options are framed, timing is managed, silence is used carefully. The room learns how to move around them. Over time, people begin to protect the structure. They explain the manipulator's behavior to others. They justify delays. They smooth over discomfort. Not because they are told to, but because keeping things calm feels easier than changing them. Machiavelli would see this as successful positioning. Power that does not need defense is the strongest kind. The manipulator stays reasonable, always composed, never dramatic. That makes resistance feel unnecessary and sometimes unreasonable. If someone pushes back, the manipulator does not escalate. They step aside. They wait. Often, others step in to restore balance. The system corrects itself. This is the clearest sign that control is already in place. In work, this looks like one person slowly becoming essential without a title. In family, it looks like one person setting the emotional temperature. In relationships, it looks like one person deciding what is discussed and what is delayed. Machiavelli would not moralize this. He would simply note that the manipulator has achieved influence at low cost. No conflict, no exposure, no risk. Others carry the weight of maintaining harmony. This is why control without drama lasts. It does not draw attention. It feels normal. By the time anyone notices the imbalance, it feels too established to question. Machiavelli would say this is not force, it is design, and design, once accepted, is very hard to undo. This is where Nietzsche would look at what is given up, not what is taken. Control without drama works because no one feels overpowered. People feel reasonable, calm, mature. They believe they are choosing cooperation over conflict. Nietzsche would ask what happens to the will in that process. Some people slowly learn to hold back their own impulses. They delay disagreement. They soften opinions. They stop insisting. Not because they are afraid, but because it feels unnecessary. Why disturb the peace when things are working? Nietzsche would say this is how strength is redirected inward. The manipulator benefits from this restraint. They do not need to challenge others. Others challenge themselves. They question whether something is worth saying, worth pushing, worth risking tension. Over time, the will turns inward and begins to police itself. Nietzsche would notice how vitality changes. One person stays composed and unchanged. Others grow careful. They choose stability over expression. They trade clarity for smoothness. This is not weakness in the usual sense. It is discipline, slowly misdirected. The room begins to value calm above truth, agreement above movement. Nothing dramatic happens, that is the point. Drama would wake people up. Calm lets patterns deepen without resistance. The manipulator does not need to silence anyone. People silence themselves. They frame it as maturity, as growth, as being the bigger person. Nietzsche would see this as a quiet surrender of will, dressed as wisdom. This is why control without drama lasts. It does not break people, it reshapes them. It teaches them to want less, to ask less, to push less. The manipulator remains stable while others adapt around them. Nietzsche would not condemn this outright. He would observe the cost. When will is restrained too often, it loses direction. People forget what they wanted before the adjustment began. They remember only the balance they are preserving. The manipulator does not force this forgetting. They benefit from it. And because nothing feels wrong, no one looks back to see what was set aside. This is control that survives by being reasonable. It stays because it feels earned. And it is hardest to undo because no one remembers the moment it began, until the next observation.